So if you notice the print is veiled in blue velvet. Well, this is kind of an inside family joke. I shared with Sean yesterday. Unfortunately, when our mother passed away, Dad was very much about pomp and circumstance, which we are not. Well, he calls us all to the cemetery, which is there, right back there, right out the window, and says, "We want you to come. I want you to come. Here we go. I want you to come see your mother's headstone." Okay, so we all get there, and it's veiled in some blue velvet that he found in Mom's sewing cabinet. So I thought it was fitting that we veil it in blue velvet. So there's your inside joke, Marshall. Happy to have it hanging here because it's really great and it's been a great memory for us. And we all have them hanging in our dens.
Wendy would now do the honors. Yeah. There it is. Thank you so much, Wendy. Now you are all invited to come into the Hunter Community Room, and we're going to talk to the Comar family.
I welcome you to the celebration of the Comar family, of which I am not one, and their long relationship with the town of Manchester through the extraordinary operation of the famous, iconic Quality restaurant. The Quality dominated Main Street in Manchester Center for 55 years under the Comars family's operation. The big neon sign with its vibrant letters directed anyone traveling Main Street to stop and eat at the Quality restaurant. Established in 1920 by Clarence Comar and his indefatigable wife, Cordelia, it dominated the social fabric of downtown Manchester for over 55 years, a half a century plus. Whether it was Saturday or Sunday during the summer, or Friday and Saturday during the winter, long lines formed on Main Street, many times beyond the Factory Point Bank building, waiting patiently, and maybe not so patiently, to be seated in the Quality by you-know-who, Mrs. Comar. As portrayed in the famous Rockwell painting entitled Gossip, Cordelia Comar had bright red hair. She stood about 4'10", I'd say. And maybe I'm making her a little taller. And she was all business. She ruled the roost, and no one could enter that restaurant before she signaled. As busy and full of nervous energy as she was, her husband Clarence was calm, controlled, and laid back in modern terms. And if anyone in town needed a French translation, Cordelia was the person to ask. Her maiden name was Tétreault, and she was born in French Canada. Because of her French background, she sometimes had a little bit of trouble with English. Two of her more famous gaffes, as related by Clay Bartlett, a great storyteller, along with Reed Lefebvre, who would back him up, she once described some new residents who moved into town, she said, as Sicilians. I think she made Sicilians, perhaps. But she said they were Sicilians and everyone knew. And she frequently would say, "Let me sit down and commensurate with you." And everybody knew what that meant. She was beloved by everyone that came in contact with her. People would drive to Manchester, not all the way from Florida, but from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York, to dine at the Quality, but more importantly, to chat and talk with Mrs. Comar. Part of the charm of the restaurant was a series of wooden booths located in the original restaurant, which you will see on the screen behind you. They were built to seat 4, but frequently seated 6 and maybe more. Each booth contained a selection box from which you could play dozens of songs on a central jukebox. All it took was a dime a song, or you could play 3 for 25 cents. These booths would fill up with teenagers after Burton Seminary basketball games on Tuesday and Friday nights. And the specialty of the house for teenagers was a concoction called a freeze. You could get it in any flavor you wanted, but it was filled with ice, 2 big straws, and you felt like an adult. It was perfect. Now, the more snobbish people that were our age would order a lemonade. And Mr. Comar or whoever was making them would deck that out with fruit and a better looking straw and a frosted glass. And I remember Barbara Heaslip. It was oh so sophisticated. The main dining room also contained a long table called the family table, which seated about 10 or 12, where local men assembled most mornings for coffee and conversation. Reed Lefebvre, a famous Manchester person and our legislator, frequently led the group, and in my time he was joined by Lynn Bourne, Don Powers, Fabio Zandi, George Heaslip, Sammy Greenberg, and Chris Sweezy, and many more. A flip of the coin determined who would pay for coffee, and a lot of grumbling would occur. And behind this long table hung this beautiful Rockwell painting, which has brought us here tonight. There was an addition to the main room in the 40s, and it was called the Triangle Room. It was a bit more formal, added to the restaurant by the Comars. Instead of booths, this room contained tables and chairs. A large staff made the whole place hum. And in the lower level, we had Rose Fredericks, Charlie Eddy, Alice Anderson, and many, many more that I can't remember. They prepared the pastries, and they did the prep work, which was then brought up to big steam tables in the kitchen at the restaurant level, where the short order cook took care of the grill. Orders were filled and distributed by waitresses, and Mickey Long and Andy and Tom Toomey washed the dishes. For many years, the front counter was run by Mary Ellen Toomey, and the waitresses were Louise Wyman, Ginny Harriman, McNulty, Flo Snyder, Stroffolino, Ann and Lucille Campney, Caroline Sargent, Edie Bolster, Millie Long, and many, many more that I can't remember. Charlie Gray was the bartender. His wife, Roselia, also worked there. She was Mrs. Comar's sister, and I think she might have been a little shorter than Mrs. Comar, as I recall. Yeah, just a very tiny little lady. I have only touched on a few of the highlights of the Quality, the people that worked there, and its time in Manchester. But for over 50 years, it was a centerpiece of activity on Main Street. Its fame spread throughout the region. It was truly a place where quality was provided. And from the mid-40s on, the Rockwell painting, War News, featuring Mr. Comar, created the ambiance of the restaurant. Now I'd like to ask a member of the Comar family, and I'll dub Jim because he's right next to me, to introduce the family, and then for family members, if they care to share any memories they have with the audience, and at the time the audience can ask any questions they have, I'll repeat the question, and we'll see who can answer it. So I turn this over now to Jimmy if you want to introduce your family.
Okay. Can you everybody hear me? Good. You know, can you hear me, Jamie? For those of you that knew Pete Comar, he was an only child. So here's the lineup of his 7 kids. Can you imagine that? And we sat in order tonight just so it would be easier to do this. And my brother Mike is the oldest. Greg is next. I'm next. Nancy Norse, Judy Comar, Carol Comar Frost, and Wendy Comar. And our spouses, some of our spouses are here, and nieces and nephews. My wife Kathy, who a lot of you probably know, you can go like this. And is Bart here? No. No. And Nancy's son Stephen, Greg's son Ben, Nancy's daughter Jamie, Greg's daughter Hannah, and Nancy's granddaughter Lucy, and Kathy's and my granddaughter Lily is right over there too. So we've it's fun to have that much representation here, and we've all really kind of been looking forward to this. It's lots of fun to represent the family, and you know, the Quality Restaurant was our life. You know, we lived and breathed the restaurant. We went there every Sunday when we were little kids for dinner after church. You know, and we had fun times with Grandma Comar on Tuesdays when the restaurant was closed. We'd go there and spend over the night with her and have fun that way. Yeah, and she'd break all the rules, let us drink coffee and do stuff like that.
And Miller High Life.
Yeah, but it was a good life. We really felt privileged to be, you know, a part of Manchester that way, and it doesn't go away, which is the nice part of it. I think it's you know, it's who we are, and we often, when we get together, it's nice for you to know that we all live within a half an hour of each other, which a lot of large families don't have that privilege, but we get together when we can, and often in our conversation and when we're rattling some ice cubes over something, we have some jokes about the restaurant, or we quote Grandma Comar because she had some wonderful sayings about things, and when she couldn't think of the name of something, she called it a business. So she'd say, "Oh baby, my business is burning," or something like that. So Judy's the cook. She likes to get us all together, and we all kind of do it. But she'll start that in her own kitchen. "Oh baby, my business is on the stove. I got to take care of that." But, so you just bring your family stuff into it, and we've been lucky enough to continue with that and just have a lot of fun with it. So. Mike, Greg, and I really were the ones that worked there through high school. And it was, Dad gave us a night off to go to a basketball game once in a while or to go to a school dance. But otherwise, we were there Friday and Saturday and Sunday of every weekend the whole time we were in high school. And we were there on Tuesdays mopping floors and cleaning fryolators and you know, scrubbing the downstairs kitchen and doing all that kind of stuff. And I think, Carol, you were there for a while too, right?
So I won the award for the Goop Beers, if anyone remembers
Harvest.
So Tina Madcore was working as a bus person and asked if I would work with her. And Dad's response was, if you're going to work in any restaurant, it's going to be for me. And I thought, I don't want to work for the family restaurant.
So I ended up working in the restaurant too. I was the counter girl. So I spent a lot of time cutting grapefruit and making sundaes, and I think I was the only one who ever cleaned out the ice cream machine while all the waitresses sat and had coffee. So I try to help out wherever I can now because it set kind of a mood with me. But we had some funny stories. Us girls, you know, not only was the restaurant a novelty, but the apartment upstairs where Grandma lived. So we would spend the night, and the kitchen was probably, I haven't seen the bathrooms here, but I bet they're 2 and 3 times bigger than her kitchen. And she didn't have a stove, she had a hot plate. And so she would make fried chicken. That's the only thing she knew how to cook, and the only thing we had, but I'll tell you, it was great. And I don't think any one of us have been able to duplicate that. But we would be able to go downstairs and make our own sundaes. I'll tell you what a treat. You know, if you think about being a kid and being able to go into a restaurant, holy moly, and make your own sundae, what a wonderful thing. And, you know, when did we start drinking Manhattans?
Oh. I think I was about 10, maybe.
Yeah, we always thought the legal drinking age in Vermont was 8. Not 18, right? Just kidding. We really didn't do that.
Seeing Terry Tyler here, Mike was talking about all the guys congregating at the family table for, you know, their get-togethers during the day and stuff. When we were kids, we used to like to go and sit at the booth in front of the family table so we could listen to Terry tell all the dirty jokes.
He's still doing that. That's wonderful.
Was it really true that you guys would have to would eat Sammy Greenberg's breakfast because it always had bacon on it? And his father would come in and it had bacon, so he'd shove it in front of one of you guys and you would eat it? Was it Orny? Or is that because he's not here, God bless his soul, and that you're passing the buck on him? Would he? Bacon. Well, did he not learn to not put pork on it? No.
Those guys, and that picture right there was some of the fire department back then. Yeah, it was Chris Sweezy and Dick Paquette, right, and Stuart Gilbert. And not sure the next guy, but the guy in the corner there, their dad was George Roberts. Remember George Roberts from the, yeah. And Dad on the end, and
Howard Daly.
Howard Daly with the glasses.
George Heaslip.
Right, George Heaslip and Lynn Walker.
I know.
Yeah, and they used to, you know, they get together for their breakfast meetings or whatever, and there were other occasions where the Rotary would go there and have their meetings and that kind of thing. But it's fun to look through a lot of that family picture stuff and see all those folks from that period of time. It was great.
So when we were kids, Christmas and Thanksgiving would come around at school, and we always had ice cream. Wilcox would deliver little pots of ice cream with a little wooden paddle, and it was always a gift, and we never had to pay for it. It wasn't part of the lunch program, and we never knew where that came from. And later on, a gazillion years later, Jim brought it to our attention that was a donation to us, and they didn't want, the grandma and dad didn't want any of us to know because they didn't want any limelight. They donated that ice cream to us every year for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And there's also like a hard candy thing too, right, Mike?
Yes.
We didn't know anything about Bischoff's?
No, we knew nothing about it. It was awesome because it was like, ooh, we're getting free ice
The
cream.
hard Christmas candy.
And it came from Grandma and Dad, and we never ever knew until years later you told us.
Yeah, Mike too, because Mike was involved in handing out the Christmas candy part of it, I think.
It was kind of a celebration
Of his
birthday.
Yeah, because Lucky Mike, his birthday's the day before Christmas, so they kind of celebrated it that way locally, you know. So
Yeah, they would drag me into the auditorium. Is this on? They would.
yeah,
They put me up in front of everyone in the auditorium, and the whole grade school would sing "Happy Birthday" to me. And that happened for probably 5 or 6 years until I finally realized that I'd had enough of that and told them that they could hand out all the candy and ice cream that they wanted, but no more happy birthday songs from the whole grade school.
And now the poor guy's birthday gets lost in the Christmas celebration, so
But that's all right.
we finally remember to say happy birthday to him along the way.
But I'm old now, so it doesn't matter. No more birthdays, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So Mike Powers was talking about short order cook, and Greg was the short order cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of short order cooking, and I used to love to, they've already mentioned the Sammy Greenberg incident, but I worked the morning shift, which took me into the lunch shift as well. And if I knew Sammy was at the table, I knew his father. It was the day his father was supposed to come into the restaurant to discuss business with Sammy for the farm work. And Sammy would look up and he'd say, oh my God, and he'd shove that plate over in front of Norm Roberts, and Norm would start cutting the ham and eating the ham, and we were all laughing, and Sammy's father's looking around like, what's so funny, guys, you know? But it was so much fun, and but I guess a bit frustrating part about short order cooking at the Quality Restaurant, working the morning shift, some of the guys would decide about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the night shift, they weren't coming in. So we'd work from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight cooking. And it was a time when Manchester really wasn't developed. We didn't have a lot of eating establishments. And Tony Perry was new. I think it was still Five Flies at that time. But we'd have a standing line all day from the Quality Restaurant past the Factory Point Bank, and it was just nonstop. We'd just kick out orders as fast as we could possibly get them out. And then and when we weren't cooking, we'd be washing dishes. And but it was all fun, and it was kind of it was a hectic day, to put it in that way. But at the end of the night, Grandma would come down. She would go upstairs and rest for a bit, and she would come down and say, "Why don't you kids all join me for a drink?" So we'd all get to the family table, and we, you know, maybe we're 16 years old, I don't know, but we, you know,
but why not?
Go and fix yourself a drink. And she didn't smoke cigarettes, but she'd light up a cigarette and have her drink, and she'd hang on to the cigarette by the bottom. She'd be holding the cigarette, and she'd get a long ash on it, and she'd bang it on the ashtray. She's talking, and we were having a great old time.
It happened pretty often, too.
It happened a lot. I mean, she appreciated what everybody did. It didn't matter what your position was at the restaurant. She knew how difficult it was to make the whole thing work. And we just, all of us, I mean, Terry Tyler, George Heaslip, all of the guys, all of the women that came in, but she'd see somebody come in, and it'd be maybe a group of 4 or 5 women or whatever on Sunday, and she'd seat them, and you could see her fidget, and she recognized them by sight, but she'd go over and she'd start fiddling with the collar on their shirt, and she'd say, "I know you, but I can't place you." and then they would speak up and say, "Well, I'm Terry Tyler."
Yeah. Or she also had a little book that was by the bar. Remember that? Yeah. And it was all her notes and stuff. And you have to understand that she only went to the 4th grade, but she was pretty systematic about things, and she had these little books that she kept behind the bar there. And she would write notes in it about people. So somebody would come in that had a little dog with them or whatever that she allowed to come in to sit down at the table. And she had a description of the dog, and then she had, while they were there, it was enough of, she was able to write their name down. So she'd look in there and she'd find the information about the dog, then she'd know who the people were. It worked for her, you know. She was like,
in the evening, somebody might come in and maybe, I mean, it was a place to go, but some people would come in to drink. And, you know, once in a while, she wouldn't over-serve them. If she knew that they'd had enough, that was it. She would politely ask them to leave. And back then, you could call the police department. If the guy was local, they'd just give him a ride home. But once in a while, they'd get a little belligerent. Well, my God, he went Buskirk. He just, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how he acted, but he just went Buskirk. And we all laughed. She always said it. It never changed.
Never figured it out.
It was never berserk. It was all Buskirk. And so, but she was, you know, Grandma was a great gal. We loved her. But she was business. Behind those doors, once she came through those kitchen doors, the fun was over. And it was usually, you know, if somebody else, one of the other short order cooks, had done something, it came on to me. So it was my fault because I was related. But she got the problem resolved and got things back in order.
Yeah.
But Grandpa Comar he was such a wonderful person. And he would, I remember I was playing baseball, Little League, and I was going to play for the Rotary Club, and Dad was involved for Rotary. And Grandpa said, well, if you can save half the money for a baseball glove, we'll go down to the combination cash store and we'll get you a baseball glove. He said, I'll pay for the rest of it. So I did. I picked out a glove, and I knew I had to have $4.25 or whatever it was. So we trucked down to the combination cash store, got home that night, and Dad said, where'd you get that baseball glove? And I said, well, I worked. I was mowing lawns, doing whatever. I said I saved half of it. Grandpa said that if I could come up with half, he'd come up with the rest of it. No way. He said, you take that baseball glove back. And he sat me and my grandfather down. He said, you don't do that kind of thing. He said, if he's going to play baseball, he's going to earn all of it. And that's kind of the way it went. So we developed a work ethic, I guess, early on. And but most of it was because of Grandma Comar. And, you know, we loved her dearly. And I guess we had as much fun after they sold the restaurant. We kept in touch. We'd go over and we'd have cocktails and dinner with her, and just it was a wonderful time. I mean, the entire time we were growing up. So we felt grateful and blessed to be part of that family.
Yeah, she was tough to work for. You know, anybody here that worked with or for her used to say, "Whoa, you know, she can really be ride you like a wild woman when she wanted to." But you know, when we were there, we had to do all the peripheral stuff, you know, mopping floors and cleaning kitchen and fry laters and stuff. And she'd say to us at the end of like a Saturday night when the place had been swamped all night, she wanted to go, I want that dining room floor mop, she'd say, and go in there and don't give it just a lick and a promise either. So that was one of her favorite lines. So we all kind of, you know, she was a pain in the neck sometimes, but we all really learned, I hope we've demonstrated in our adult life that we learned some good work ethic from that upbringing. There's no question about that, you know, so. But it was all an experience. We could go on, and we're just keeping it clean, too, so.
Why don't we open it up for a few questions? About 15 minutes would do. And the one thing I do remember about your grandmother is that when she'd go to a table, she'd stand and she'd put her hands on the edge of the table like that and lean right in like that, and you paid attention. She was right in your face.
That's right.
She was right in your face. So, Bobby Standard?
Do you still have the book?
Do you still have
the book with all the information? We don't have that. We don't have that, Bob, to be honest with you, but I've got a pretty cool scrapbook that Sean has actually taken and scanned all of the information that was in it. It was something that Grandma created along the way, and it's full of local interesting newspaper clippings and photographs and stuff of the town of Manchester. And I'll tell you, I just ended up with it when we kind of have consolidated the family stuff. And here's an example of it. I at some point was looking at it. I like to get it out periodically and just kind of breeze through it. And in there is a picture of Factory Point Bank, which of course I worked there for 30 years. And in the early days of being there, the bank renovated the building when Heinels and Purdy's moved out and we took over the whole bank. And there was an article in there about the grand opening of the new building and everything. And there was a picture there of Homer Ellis hanging the new sign over the door. It was just, it happened to be an article of that. And, you know, I've always sort of cherished that a little bit. And then not too long after I looked at that picture, currently I was driving down Main Street and just coincidentally happened to drive by the bank when Berkshire had taken over the bank and they were out there taking that sign down. So, you know, I drove by with a big lump in my throat, to be honest with you, but it was nice to have that as, I don't have a picture of Berkshire taking it down, but I've got Homer's picture putting it up, and it's full of stuff like that. I'd love to share it with you, to be honest with you, because it's very cool. There's some really great stuff.
Other questions? Come on, audience.
Linda.
Linda?
I remember you told the story about your grandmother losing her false teeth one time.
Oh, yeah.
A story about your grandmother moving her false teeth? Losing her false, not moving her false teeth, losing her false teeth.
I don't remember all the details about that now, but...
Don't you have one of those, my mom?
Huh? She's getting in trouble, Nancy. But Linda, I don't remember though. There...
Grounded. I thought they fell in the toilet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Pulled them out and
Yes.
stuck them back.
Yep. That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put a little light on that. How simple Grandma was. Dad had bought her a bottle of Chanel No. 5 when it came out. He couldn't afford the perfume, so he bought her the Eau de Toilette. Well, it was a Tuesday when the restaurant closed. I would go to the restaurant as a little kid with Mom while she did payroll. And Grandma was upstairs spiffing up her apartment, which was upstairs, and Dad came upstairs and he said, "Well, Mother, it smells pretty good up here." And she said, "Wow, that bathroom cleaner you bought me is..." And he said, "What do you, whoa, that Eau de Toilette, that Chanel, that number 3, I think she said. That number 3's making my number..." It's making my toilet smell pretty good. He said, "What the hell are you doing? That's perfume." But I was a little kid and I'll never forget that. It was so funny. And that was how simple she was, you know. Oh, God.
She used to, when the restaurant was closed on Tuesday, she used to invite Jim and me and whoever else wanted to go to Rutland. She loved to go shopping. But every time she got a new car, Dad, I guess my father picked the car out, but it was always a standard shift. And she learned how to drive on a Model A or Model T Ford or whatever. And so we were going to Rutland one day, and she got excited. She was making a turn. Well, she wrapped the turn lever right up over the steering column, and just, she thought she was downshifting the car.
Because there's three on the tree, you know.
The shifter's over here, but she just pulled the shifter down and she foot on the gas. It might be in high gear. You know, she's only going from here to the Grand Union.
But she never used first gear, or she drove to Rutland and back in second. It was always second, immediately into second, and stayed in second gear the entire time.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, baby.
So you
oh,
can
baby.
hear the car whining, you know.
Oh, baby. One day I was walking up Center Hill and I heard the and so she and Nellie Larry are going down to the IGA where Discount Beverages. and she had a flat tire. Well, she didn't even know it. She was going right down, and she went and did her business and came back up with a flat tire. But that's the way she was, and she was just a lot of fun.
Other questions from the floor? I think we all get the flavor of what this was like. Wes?
Did any famous people ever die at the Quality?
Oh, yeah.
Man from Uncle.
Linda Darnell.
The question was, did any famous people die at the Quality?
Dying.
Oh, dying. The question was, well, you see, I was in the restaurant having dinner one night when somebody did croak at a table. No, in the first booth in front of the cash register, and your grandma just pushed them over. And he launched them not down, just over in there and said, everybody eat, everybody eat. And as I think Jimmy said, well, you know, she wasn't going to lose any business.
Yeah.
That person wasn't pummeled anymore.
That's
no.
right.
Did any famous person ever dine at the restaurant?
When us guys worked there, Ilya, how do you say it? Koryakis worked there, was there. Yeah. That's the one I remember. Man from Uncle. Huh? Of who? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot that.
Okay, here we go. Now, times have changed. The men's bathroom was convenient and downstairs in between the family table and another long booth going this way, but women had to hike their way up a staircase that was like this. It always smelled good, though.
Yeah, it did.
It was number 3. Chanel number 3.
Well, in line with that bathroom, Reed Lefebvre's slightly off-color story. After Mrs. Comar had established the ladies' room on the second floor, she had a reception upstairs to show off the new room. Reed Lefebvre tells this story, and there were several people. I've never been there, but I guess it's not a very large room, and it was very, very warm in the room, Reed Lefebvre says. And so your grandmother got all kind of flustered about it, and she went over and she said, she bent over like this and said, let me make a little wind for you. Reed Lefebvre said it ruined, it just cracked the whole party up.
Yep, that sounds
So I think we can all see that we had something very special. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say that it operated as a Quality for several years afterwards, and it became, again, an iconic place. Certainly when Wayne Bell was operating the restaurant, it was the go-to place for a lot of people, for lunch and for cocktails and to meet. And then Phil Rizzuto's daughter ran it for I don't know how many years, but he certainly was a famous person. He must have eaten.
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So it had a long career, and it was never quite the same as it was with Mrs. Comar behind the cash register. And, you know, you could buy a cigar under the counter and sit in that place and ruin the restaurant by smoking the cigar.
Yeah.
Everybody puffed one after dinner there, but we treasure it, and I can't thank you enough for all appearing here tonight and meeting this family. And Wendy, the picture is fabulous, and our heritage is much richer for it. Jimmy.
Yeah. It's starting at it's Mike with the tie. That's our mom, Bev Comar. Wendy, right there in the long dress. Carol beside her. Dad and Grandma. And Judy, and that's me in the back. And Nancy. And the guy standing behind Nancy is Nancy's first husband, Charlie Mensch. And Greg. And, you know, we were all talking about, of course, we've looked at that picture recently, and damn, I couldn't find my leisure suit, or I would have worn it. Greg has his on there, but
I don't have it.
but you know, I got to tell you that my mother, our mother was a really wonderful seamstress, and what I remember is that sport coat that I have on, she made for me.
She made my dress too.
Yeah, she was great, but that was the reception at the time the restaurant sold. That's why we were gathered, and it was over at the Catholic Church. Yep. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, she was giving Judy some business there. That's why.
Yeah.
One of the really funny things is one of the really funny statements that she used to say is when Dad would give her a hard time, she'd say, "He's jacking me up again." So we use that all the time. He's jacking me up again.
Yeah.
Some of the things that used to come out of her mouth. Oh my God.
Yeah, she had some great sayings. Yeah. Yep.
Well, on behalf of the Historical Society, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come here and entertain this large, wonderful crowd. I love it.
Oh, by the way, my name is Wendy Comar. If you know me, because about this family means everything to me. For the past 24 and a half years, I love my sister, Hannah. I love you, Jamie. Because I'm proud to be Comar. I'm proud to be a nice, wonderful Comar, crazy Comar heritage, baby. I'll be here every day. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, let me present to you the next John Lennon.
All right. All right. And Freddie, do you have some words?
Yes, I'd like to invite everyone to stop by and have some chocolates that are a gift from Mother Myrick's right outside on your way out. Thank you very much, Mother Myrick's. And thank you all for coming.